Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Well, as of April 23rd, I'm delighted to say that the state of California has a new Attorney General, and we have him here today to get to know him a little bit. I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Bonta. So nice to have you here.
Honored to be here, Maria.
All right. I have to actually go back in time a little bit because learning about you and your history, your parents influenced you in so many ways. I mean, civil service and civil rights are literally in your genetics. What was it like growing up in your household, and what did they teach you, and what had inspired you to then move into a career in civil service?
Well, as you mentioned, that commitment to civil rights, to lift people up, right wrongs, fight injustice is in my DNA, passed down by my parents, who are my biggest inspirations, my biggest supporters. They didn't just tell me, but they showed me what fighting for justice, fighting for civil rights looks like. My father was in Selma, Alabama, organizing for civil rights and voting rights. He was in church with Martin Luther King Jr. He met Stokely Carmichael. He was part of one of the greatest movements in the history of our nation. And later, both my mother and my father worked for the United Farm Workers of America. We lived in the headquarters of that movement in La Paz, outside of Bakersfield, in the Tehachapi Mountains. And my father worked in the front office with Cesar Chavez. My mother worked in the preschool. She worked with Dolores Huerta. One of the great Filipino-American leaders, Philip Veracruz, would come to our trailer that we lived in, our family of five. We would host him for Filipino breakfast. And then my mom fought for the restoration of democracy. She's an immigrant from the Philippines, and came here for the first time when she was 28 years old on a 3-week ship ride. And I was born in the Philippines, and at 2 months my parents brought me here to California because of the rise to power of Ferdinand Marcos, who declared martial law, was a dictator, had a raft of human rights abuses as part of his time in power. And my mom fought for the restoration of democracy in the Philippines for years. From my first birthday, when martial law was declared on September 22nd, 1972, until my teenage years. So on my birthday, for all those years, my mom would throw a birthday party for me, and then she'd organize a protest.
You really have worked towards reform when you were in the state assembly. So now, as Attorney General, where do you see your priorities? What are some of the things that you really are hoping to focus on?
As an assembly member, we had such a broad range of issues that we worked on, and the same is true as a California Attorney General. I'm focusing on quite a few areas, prioritizing them, but also working on others in addition. Right now, we're focusing a lot on taking on the forces of hate, as so many Californians suffer the sting of hate crimes, hate attacks, hate incidents. Making sure that folks know that we're here at the California Attorney General's office to protect you, to support you, to bring the perpetrators who peddle in hate, hold them accountable, and to make sure victims heal. We're taking on big corporations when they scam or defraud or hurt Californians, when they violate the law. We want to make sure that we're holding them accountable. We're making sure that our criminal justice system is fair and equitable and more compassionate. And we're making sure we're lifting up communities that live at the intersection of poverty and pollution, suffering from environmental injustice, and making sure that they're seen and cared for and valued. So a lot of what I do, I see my role as being the people's attorney, fighting for everyday people, especially the most vulnerable and the voiceless, those who've been abused or hurt or harmed. And I balance the scales of justice for them, make sure that they know they have a champion. I make their fights my fights, and try to right wrongs.
What have you been able to do, and what are you putting in place?
It's been a sprint, off to a fast start. Really want to make a difference with authority and the tools that we have in the California Department of Justice. And you know, the thing that keeps me up most at night is I ask myself, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough to help people? Am I using all of the authority, influence, levers of power in the office to help people and to right wrongs and make sure people are safe and are treated fairly and equitably? And so we've been doing so many things in so many different areas, you know, from the biggest cases in front of the United States Supreme Court, including leading on the amicus brief of the big reproductive freedom case coming out of Mississippi. We successfully defended the Affordable Care Act in front of the United States Supreme Court. making sure that millions of Americans had access to health care. We're fighting for gun safety, making sure we're defending our common sense gun laws in the state of California, and also with briefs in other states across the nation, making sure there's healthcare access and healthcare affordability as we oversee mergers of different hospitals. So we have a lot of different roles.
In terms of criminal justice reform, I know that that's something you were talking about, compassionate justice and understanding the balance and what is really something that should be, laying down the hammer and what could actually be. So what are some of the things that you would like to do while Attorney General when it comes to criminal justice reform?
One of the interesting parts about the job is I'm defending laws that the legislature passed that in the criminal justice reform space, including some of my own. One of them is a bill that I'm very proud of, AB 32, which ended the use of for-profit private prisons and for-profit private immigration detention centers in the state of California. And we're defending that law in court to help make sure that that sticks and that those who would benefit from it, their health, safety, and welfare would be improved, actually get that benefit. So that's one item. We're looking at some of the sentences, many of which are excessive in the state of California, to see if there's ways to work with victims and courts and defense counsel to get to a fairer sentence, and working with some of the laws and the tools that the legislature has provided. We're also involved with providing oversight and accountability investigations of officer-involved shootings that lead to the death of an unarmed Californian. So we're leading in those investigations, getting on the ground. Based on historic data, there's about 40 of those a year, so we've already seen quite a few in California. And so we're investigating those and taking the lead as the Department of Justice. We're also doing what are called pattern and practice investigations of law enforcement jurisdictions where there's a pattern and practice of violating civil rights or constitutional rights of community members, and helping them adopt practices that are not violative of civil rights and are supportive of the community, while also helping with a successful law enforcement mission. So those are some of the areas where we're working, and there will be many others as well, but those are some of the focal points at the moment.
Hopefully, there's good news in terms of vaccine boosters and coming out of the pandemic and everything like that. So, does it feel like government is ramping back up in a very robust way, or are there still issues that need to be dealt with the fact that everyone was working remotely and everybody was coming up with new ways to work? Are there things that you can carry over in this era?
I think California specifically has done an incredible job with combating the virus, leading with facts and science and data and evidence. Specifically, Governor Newsom has been an absolute champion, getting vaccines in arms. We have one of the lowest positivity rates, highest vaccination rates. There's still some folks who aren't getting vaccinated, and that's a challenge. We hope that more will, and that will help us do more things safely. But we're also learning from the time during COVID where we were forced to live differently, that some of the things that we were doing might continue and might be preferred ways. More work at home, less commute times, more time with family. Some people want that. And so in our office, again, over 5,000 people, I'm very supportive of working virtually if folks wish, and if they obviously we need to get the job done. It's about outcome and work product, but doing things differently is not something that I'm afraid of, and I think it could be positive when we're open to different approaches.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank
today.
you. This role is the honor and privilege of a lifetime. I'm thrilled to be in this role. I'm going to fight for the people of California as hard as I can, do as much good as possible, and I'm honored to be with you, Maria. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.